Dear students, in the previous lecture, we have discussed the role of UN Security Council in combating terrorism. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss role of the UN General Assembly in addressing the problem of terrorism. Dear students, the UN General Assembly plays an important role in combating terrorism by passing resolutions, by initiating initiatives, and by setting up of norms and standards. Dear students, the UN General Assembly adopts resolutions that provide a framework for international action against terrorism. These resolutions define terrorism, condemn terrorist attacks, and call upon member states to implement specific measures to counter terrorism. Resolutions passed by the UN General Assembly contribute to the development of international law and provide guidance on legal and operational aspects of counterterrorism. Dear students, the UN General Assembly has adopted a number of resolutions on counterterrorism. Each resolution addresses different aspects of the global effort to combat terrorism. Some of the key resolutions passed by the UN General Assembly are like Resolution 14960. This resolution reaffirms the commitment of member states of the United Nations to take collective measures to eliminate international terrorism. It urges states to become parties to relevant international conventions and protocols related to terrorism and to cooperate fully in their implementation. Then there is another resolution which was passed by the UN General Assembly, that is Resolution 51-210. It deals with measures to eliminate international terrorism. This resolution condemns all acts of terrorism as criminal and unjustifiable, regardless of their motivation, and calls on all member states to prevent and combat terrorism. This resolution emphasizes the importance of international cooperation in combating terrorism, including the exchange of information and extradition of terrorists. Then there is another resolution, Resolution 56-1. This resolution was adopted by UN General Assembly in 2001. It deals with United Nations response to terrorism. This resolution also condemns the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 and expresses solidarity with the victims and their families. It calls on all states to work together to combat terrorism and reaffirms the right of self-defense in accordance with the UN Charter. Then there is another resolution, Resolution 6288, which was adopted in 2006. This resolution adopts the UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy, which is a comprehensive framework for preventing and combating terrorism. This resolution emphasizes on 4 pillars of the strategy: addressing conditions which are conducive to the spread of terrorism, preventing and combating terrorism, building states' capacity to prevent and combat terrorism, and ensuring respect for human rights while countering terrorism. Another resolution is Resolution 62-272. This resolution was adopted in 2008. This resolution strengthens the role of the United Nations in enhancing international cooperation in preventing, combating, and eliminating terrorism. So this resolution also reaffirms the commitment of member states to strengthen international cooperation in preventing, combating, and eliminating terrorism. It calls for the implementation of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy and encourages states to share best practices and enhance technical assistance and capacity building efforts. Another resolution is 72-179, which was adopted in 2017. It deals with measures to eliminate international terrorism. This resolution condemns all acts of terrorism in the strongest terms and reaffirms the need for a comprehensive approach to counterterrorism. It calls on states to fully implement relevant international instruments and conventions related to counterterrorism and urges them to cooperate with each other and with the UN while combating terrorism. So, dear students, these resolutions which were passed by the UN General Assembly to counter terrorism demonstrate the ongoing commitment of the UN General Assembly to address the global threat of terrorism through cooperation, coordination, and the promotion of international legal frameworks and norms. Dear students, the UN General Assembly also plays an important role in addressing the problem of terrorism by initiating action plans and strategies. As you know, the UN General Assembly launched many initiatives and action plans to address various dimensions of terrorism. The UN General Assembly has adopted various initiatives and action plans to address the challenge of counterterrorism. Some of the key initiatives, action plans are like United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. It was adopted in 2006 through Resolution 60-288. The UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy provides a comprehensive framework for preventing and combating terrorism. It consists of 4 pillars: addressing conditions which are conducive to the spread of terrorism, preventing and combating terrorism, building states' capacity to prevent and combat terrorism, and ensuring respect for human rights while countering terrorism. This counter-terrorism strategy emphasizes the importance of international cooperation, coordination, and solidarity in addressing the global threat of terrorism. Plan of action to prevent violent extremism. This plan was launched in 2016. The plan of action to prevent violent extremism aims to address the underlying causes of violent extremism and radicalization. It focuses on preventing individuals from being drawn into violent extremist ideologies and addresses issues such as governance, human rights, education, and social inclusion. The plan of action emphasizes the need for a comprehensive approach that involves governments, civil society, religious leaders, and communities in countering violent extremism. UN Counterterrorism Center. It was established in 2011. This UN Counterterrorism Center serves as a focal point for the UN's counterterrorism efforts and provides capacity building assistance to member states. It supports states in developing national counterterrorism strategies, enhancing border security, countering terrorist financing, and preventing violent extremism. This counter-terrorism center of UN works closely with other UN entities, international organizations, and regional partners to coordinate counter-terrorism initiatives and promote best practices. Global Counterterrorism Forum. It was launched in 2011. This Global Counterterrorism Forum is an international platform for dialogue for cooperation on counterterrorism issues. It brings together governments, international organizations, and civil society to develop and implement practical measures to prevent and combat terrorism. This Global Counterterrorism Forum focuses on capacity building, countering violent extremism, and enhancing international cooperation in areas such as border security, law enforcement, and criminal justice. High level conference of heads of counterterrorism agencies of member states. This conference was convened by the UN General Assembly. The high level conference provides a forum for heads of counterterrorism agencies from member states to exchange experiences, to exchange best practices and lessons learned in combating terrorism. It facilitates dialogue and cooperation among member states and promotes the implementation of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy and other relevant initiatives. The conference also addresses emerging trends and challenges in counterterrorism and identifies areas for collective actions. So, dear students, these initiatives, these action plans underscore the UN General Assembly's commitment to address the complex and evolving threat of terrorism through cooperation, coordination, and capacity building efforts at the global, regional, and national level. Dear students, UN General Assembly also plays an important role in countering terrorism by setting norms and standards. Through its resolutions and declarations, the UN General Assembly sets norms and standards for counterterrorism efforts. These norms include principles related to human rights, rule of law, respect for international humanitarian law. By establishing norms, the UN General Assembly guides member states in formulating domestic legislation and policies to combat terrorism while upholding fundamental rights and freedoms. So, dear students, the UN General Assembly has played a crucial role in setting norms, standards, and strategies for counterterrorism through various resolutions, through various initiatives. Some of the key norms and standards which were set up by the UN General Assembly are: defining terrorism means the UN General Assembly has adopted resolutions that define terrorism and distinguish it from the legitimate struggle for self-determination and national liberation. These definitions provide a common understanding and a common framework for addressing terrorism at the international level. Condemnation of terrorism. Through various resolutions, the UN General Assembly condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, irrespective of the perpetrators or motivations behind such acts. These condemnations reinforce the global consensus that terrorism is unacceptable and must be combated through collective action. Protection of human rights and fundamental rights. The UN General Assembly emphasizes the importance of respecting human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. Resolutions stress that counterterrorism measures should comply with international law, including international human rights law, refugee law, and humanitarian law. Dear students, the UN General Assembly also serves as a global forum for member states to exchange views, to share best practices, and coordinate efforts in combating terrorism. It provides a platform for dialogue and cooperation among nations. It promotes international solidarity and consensus on counterterrorism measures. Through discussions, through debates, the UN General Assembly promotes understanding and cooperation among member states in addressing the multifaceted challenges posed by terrorism. Dear students, the UN General Assembly also encourages international cooperation in combating terrorism by facilitating information sharing, capacity building, mutual assistance among member states. It calls upon countries to enhance cooperation at regional and global levels to prevent terrorist attacks, to disrupt terrorist networks, to prosecute the perpetrators of terrorism. By promoting collaboration, cooperation, the UN General Assembly strengthens the collective response to the global threat of terrorism. Dear students, the UN General Assembly also advocates for comprehensive approaches to counter terrorism that address root causes such as poverty, inequality, social exclusion. It emphasizes the importance of addressing grievances and vulnerabilities that fuel radicalization and extremism. By promoting inclusive governance, socio-economic development, and conflict resolution, the UN General Assembly aims to prevent the spread of terrorism and promote peace and stability worldwide. So, dear students, we can say the UN General Assembly plays an important role in combating terrorism by adopting resolutions, by initiating action plans, by setting norms and standards, by providing a platform for dialogue, by promoting international cooperation and advocating for a comprehensive approach. Through its efforts, the UN General Assembly contributes to strengthening the global response to the scourge of terrorism while upholding the principles of international law, human rights, and peace. Dear students, now we are going to discuss that why UN General Assembly's role in combating terrorism is important. Dear students, the role of UN General Assembly in addressing this problem of terrorism is of significance due to many reasons, like UN General Assembly serves as a forum where all 193 member states are represented, providing a platform for global dialogue and cooperation on counterterrorism efforts. It allows for the exchange of diverse perspectives, experiences, and best practices among nations in addressing the multifaceted challenges posed by terrorism. Dear students, the resolutions which were passed by the UN General Assembly carry significant normative authority, reflecting the collective will and consensus of the international community. By condemning terrorism, by defining its parameters and outlining strategies for its prevention and suppression, the UN General Assembly sets global norms and standards that guide states' actions in combating terrorism. Decisions and initiatives taken by the UN General Assembly possess inherent legitimacy due to the universal membership of the UN General Assembly. The participation of all member states gives credibility to counterterrorism efforts and reinforces the notion that combating terrorism is a shared responsibility of the international community. The UN General Assembly's role is also important in addressing terrorism because it promotes multilateralism as the preferred approach to address global challenges like terrorism. By promoting cooperation, dialogue, and collaboration among nations, the UN General Assembly strengthens the collective capacity of states to prevent terrorist attacks, to disrupt terrorist networks, and address the root causes of terrorism. The UN General Assembly also plays an important role in setting the global agenda on counterterrorism by identifying emerging threats, mobilizing resources, and prioritizing key areas for action. Through resolutions, declarations, and action plans, the UN General Assembly addresses evolving challenges and adopts responses to the changing nature of terrorism. The UN General Assembly's role in addressing terrorism is also important because it recognizes the different capacities of member states to combat terrorism. The UN General Assembly facilitates capacity building initiatives and provides technical assistance to enhance states' capabilities in areas such as border security, law enforcement, and counter financing of terrorism and countering violent extremism. The UN General Assembly also emphasizes the importance of counterterrorism measures complying with international law, including human rights law, refugee law, and humanitarian law. By promoting respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, the UN General Assembly ensures that counterterrorism efforts are conducted in a manner which are consistent with the rule of law and democratic principles. So, dear students, we can say the UN General Assembly's role in combating terrorism is significant, is important because it provides a global platform for consensus building, norm setting, and cooperation among member states, thereby contribute to a collective and coordinated international response to the threat of terrorism while upholding the principles of international law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. Dear students, now we are going to discuss the challenges which UN General Assembly faces while addressing the problem of terrorism. The UN General Assembly faces many challenges which hinder the successful implementation of anti-terrorism measures provided by it, like lack of political will. One of the primary challenges is the absence of political will among some member states to fully implement the UN General Assembly's resolutions and initiatives on counterterrorism. Political considerations, internal and conflicting interests may prevent collective action, therefore, can lead to gaps in implementation efforts. Many member states, particularly those with limited resources, are facing competing priorities, may struggle to allocate sufficient resources for implementing counterterrorism measures outlined in the UN General Assembly resolutions. So, inadequate funding for capacity building, technical assistance, and infrastructure development can hamper efforts to strengthen counterterrorism capabilities. Some states may also lack the technical expertise, institutional capacity, or legal frameworks which are necessary to effectively implement UN General Assembly's resolutions on counterterrorism. Weaknesses in border control, law enforcement, intelligence sharing, and judicial systems can undermine efforts to prevent terrorist attacks and prosecute perpetrators. Coordination challenges. Coordination, cooperation among national agencies, regional organizations, and international partners are essential for the successful implementation of counterterrorism measures. However, challenges such as bureaucratic hurdles, information laws, and tough wars can hinder effective coordination, which can result in fragmented responses to terrorism threats. Legal and regulatory frameworks. Implementing the UN General Assembly's resolutions on counterterrorism often requires states to enact or amend domestic laws and regulations to criminalize terrorist activities, prosecute suspects, and enhance security measures. However, legal and regulatory frameworks in some countries may be inadequate or outdated, therefore can pose obstacles to compliance with international standards. Dear students, today terrorism is a transnational phenomenon that transcends borders and jurisdictions. making cooperation among states imperative for effective counterterrorism efforts. However, differences in legal systems, diplomatic relations, and geopolitical tensions can prevent international cooperation, therefore, can hinder efforts to combat cross border terrorism networks. Protection of human rights. Balancing counter-terrorism measures with the protection of human rights presents a significant challenge. Some counter-terrorism measures such as surveillance, detention without trial, and targeted killings may infringe upon individual rights and freedoms. Striking the right balance between security imperatives and human rights principles is essential but often very contentious issue. Dear students, another challenge is radicalization and violent extremism. Addressing the root causes of terrorism, including radicalization and violent extremism, requires comprehensive strategies that go beyond law enforcement and security measures. Socioeconomic disparities, political grievances, and ideological factors contribute to radicalization, therefore pose complex challenge for prevention and rehabilitation efforts. Adaptation to evolving threats. Terrorist tactics, techniques, and procedures evolve over time, requiring counterterrorism measures to adapt accordingly. Rapid advances in technology, including cyberspace and social media platforms, have facilitated terrorist recruitment, communication, and propaganda dissemination, posing new challenges for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Geopolitical dynamics. Geopolitical tensions, regional conflicts, and diplomatic disputes can complicate efforts to combat terrorism, particularly when counterterrorism measures intersect with broader geopolitical interests. Competing agendas, alliances, and rivalries among states may undermine cooperation and coordination on counterterrorism initiatives at the international level. Dear students, addressing these challenges requires sustained commitment, collaboration, and cooperation among member states, regional organizations, civil society, and international partners. Overcoming obstacles to the implementation of UN General Assembly's resolutions and initiatives on counterterrorism is essential for strengthening global efforts to prevent and combat terrorism effectively while upholding the principles of international law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. So, dear students, in today's lecture, we have seen that the UN General Assembly plays a crucial role in combating terrorism through its adoption of resolutions, initiation of action plans, setting of norms and standards, promotion of international cooperation, and advocacy for comprehensive approach. By leveraging its representative forum, normative authority, legitimacy, and universality, the UN General Assembly strengthens the collective capacity of member states to address the multifaceted challenges posed by terrorism. Despite facing various challenges such as lack of political will, resource constraints, capacity limitations, coordination challenges, and the transnational nature of terrorism, the UN General Assembly remains committed to promoting a coordinated and comprehensive international response to the threat of terrorism. Overcoming these challenges requires sustained commitment, collaboration, and cooperation among member states, regional organizations, civil society organizations, and international partners. By addressing these obstacles, these challenges, and implementing UN General Assembly's resolutions and initiatives on counterterrorism effectively, the international community can enhance global security, protect human rights, and uphold the principles of international law and peace. Thank you.